looks like we're recording. Welcome back to World's Strongest Opinions. Fourth visit from Andrew Clayton. We haven't had you on since, it looks like episode 24, 25. I think we had you on episode 5, 8, there. And 24, 25. I can't remember. Yeah. So it's been a minute. We're on episode 62. Just welcome back, man. Always great
for you guys.
You're the only guest we've had on 4 times. So
actually, Emmanuel Pescari's been on the show 4 times, but he helped kind of co-host too.
Okay.
So so we do have to shout out Emmanuel Pescari.
Okay.
Some of our favorite 105s.
Yeah. Well, what's happening, man? I mean, since you were on last. I mean, last time you were on, you had just come off a fresh win from Clash on the Coast, I believe.
Wait. You can't say it. Might have a trademark. Can't say it.
It was Clash on the Coast then, though. It was officially still Clash on the Coast, was it not?
I don't know. You know, my lawyer said I should not say that name.
Okay. Well, I don't have a lawyer telling me not to say Clash on the Coast, so I'm going to say it. Because I believe that's what it was branded as at the time.
Yeah, that's what it was. That was the last show I did.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that was March 20 something. So yeah, it's been almost a year.
Yeah.
Which is like the longest I ever go without competing. So ironically, I have a contest tomorrow. It's the America's Strongest Team competition. I'm just helping in it and helping Team Florida. I mean, we already kind of know we won because everybody moves to Florida when everything goes bad. So like, I'm pretty confident to say Florida's the best state. So if you aren't moving to your state when everything's locked down, I don't think you really have any argument in that race. So
yeah, hell yeah, man. Where's that being held at?
It's in Tallahassee. It's being hosted by Iron Vault.
Okay.
Brett does a lot of like really big shows. Like he does Highland Games too, and they just got a really good culture there. But I think it's actually Brandon's show, if I remember correctly, from Alabama. I think he's from Alabama.
Yeah, Brandon Spivey. We had him on about it.
But it's interesting. I don't know how much I'll actually do. I don't think I'm going to deadlift. I kind of having like some elbow pain recently because I've been pressing so much. So I might just like one motion the log, a few reps and be done.
There you go.
But I got sandbag the shoulder in it, and then I think I got to carry like a 400-pound sandbag for my team in the medley. So
nice.
I guess I'll have quote unquote fun.
You're going to shoulder the sandbag for the carry, right?
No. I mean, I could, but like,
400 pounds, like all things considered, is pretty light for you now.
It all depends on the bag. I mean, that
sure.
Event is so like, stones are like harder to be like a big spread, right? Because like you could put a ton of lead in an 18-inch stone to make a 400-pound 18-inch stone, which would suck to load. But like normally they go up in size like pretty uniformly. Like you go to a show and if it's a 400-pound stone, it's like a 20, maybe a 21, maybe a 22. But like a sandbag could be like a 140 bag that's filled with lead, or it could be the 180 bag and it's loose and it's not packed.
Floppy. Yeah.
So I made the mistake of making originally it was 411, it dried out, and then I started adding sand back, but I think it was a 140 kilo bag, and Cerebus, like or Cerebus, whatever, their bags, I think can hold like 5 to 10% more than what they list. Rogue, I think barely you can fit what they say in it. So it was more like a 330 bag in my opinion. But that bag seems to be optimal for shoulder, that one or the 160. But I used the 180 recently for my unofficial world record attempt. And that thing was just too tall and it wasn't solid enough for me to like apply force into it. So very frustrating.
Yeah. I'm curious about how you pronounce Cerberus.
I don't know how to read. I literally don't know how to read. I'm in strongman. I mean, look, there's a double negative. There's a double negative behind me. Everybody's
never.
True. I got the shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. I was like, they're excellent. I was like, I'm prepared.
I don't even know if I pronounce it right. That's just the way I pronounce it. I think
Cerberus. I always, Cerberus. I was like, that's good. Before we go on, I forgot to your pressing comment. One of the favorite things I saw online recently was Wesley Claiborne did some pressing and you commented underneath, you're like, DM for pressing advice. I was like, that was the funniest comment.
Well, we're actually friends, so it's fine.
Like, that's
I would
what
never
made it
say
so
it to
good.
someone else. I'm trying to get him to come out and, come to my show and do something at intermission, or I just want to, I want to be able to compete against him again. That'd be really fun because we competed our first time in 2010. So like we've known each other for 14 years now. We probably didn't say any words until like 2013 or 14. It was just like, oh shit, I'm going to Georgia. That's who I'm competing with.
That's awesome. So tell us about the show. First called Strength Classic.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wanted to do it in the spring. I think just because I know I have a lot of stuff over the summer and in the fall. Like I have to go to nationals and help athletes. And I wanted to have a show that some of my athletes could qualify. So I did go USS sanctioned. Probably in the future will be an unsanctioned show. It's just hard to give money to sanction something when I think the athletes should get the money. And I'm not even going to get in the whole argument like, oh, we treat our athletes better and all that kind of stuff with promoters. But I just think like it'd be nice if, like, I remember the shows I did that were local, and if I won back my entry fee plus gas money, that was like a really good show, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like the entry fee costs 80 to 100. If I could win 100, 150, I can drive there the day of. I mean, I'm essentially just getting like a free day to train, and people are loading the weights for me. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so I am doing it at my church, so it'll be indoors. I tried to pick events that were pretty standardized. I didn't want anything too crazy. I do want it decently heavy. I have the weights listed. I might modify them. I looked up Florida's Strongest Man. It's run by Alan Colley in December. So that's usually our heaviest show in Florida. So I wanted to go a little lighter than that. Or for a couple of the events, there are options of weights. So I'm doing axle from blocks, which is really funny because I criticize people that can't clean the axle but have big numbers out of the rack. But I also didn't want to judge axle cleans because the belt and the this and that. And I thought axle would be better for people that are new to the sport, right? It's more like a barbell. So that's why I made that event. And then you can pick between two different weights, but you have to pick before you go up. So that'll hopefully get people to not feel like they can't hit a weight. And then the last event, which I think is one of the most unique, is sandbag for points. So heavier bag will be 5 points. Lighter bag will be 1 point. They're about a 50-pound difference depending on the division. You can't go back up. So once you go to light bag, you got to stay there. So my thought is, you get some heavyweight guys that are getting like 3 or 4 reps, and then one guy in the last second hits the light bag for 1 rep, and now he beat the other guy by 1 point. And it's for 2 minutes total. So it's a little bit CrossFit-y. Yeah. So in the heavyweight division, I'm thinking about 350 and 300. So like if I were to do that, my goal would be like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 on the 350, and then hopefully, whatever I need to break the tie on, on the light bag. The other events are the sandbag toss medley. I'm doing Ukrainian deadlift. I have handles from Bartos. He's actually sponsoring the show. So that'll be really cool. And then I'm having a custom farmers made also by Bartos. So on the dead sled, how he has rotating handles, has a 1 inch hand or a 1 1/4 inch handle and a 2 inch handle. And then we're making out of wood, the farmers, kind of like the Slater farmers. So you go down 50 feet with the normal handle, rotate your own handle, and then back with a 2 inch handle. And so I did this for a couple reasons. Originally, I was going to do a rotating handle, and I found out that is way too hard. So like the heavyweight division would be using like 130 a hand. I'm like, that's not impressive. Right. But my rationale was, since we're doing it in an indoor gym, I wanted to have lighter weights and less chance of drops and damage. I'm using bumper plates on the farmers, so if they tip over, it's fine. And we're going to put stall mats on the bottom. So yeah, everything's going to be like super safe for the indoor facility. All the plates used are going to be calibrated kilos or calibrated bumpers, which you've probably never seen before. Like even at OSG, they don't use calibrated plates. And then it's going to be like OSG where they walk into the back door of the gym. There's a warm-up area in the carport. I have a local company that buys and sells equipment here, and they're going to bring like some racks and bars and weights. So there should be a good warm-up area. There should only be the athletes competing on the floor. It's going to be roped off. You can enter through the gym. There's concessions. I can go on and on. It's a really great venue. I think if I get about 30 or 40 athletes, It can get about 200 to 250 spectators inside the gym.
Nice.
I think it'll be a good, like, I don't want to say like intimate show, but like, you'll be up close and personal with the action and very easy to see.
Right. So where's it? Is this posted on like Iron Podium or?
Yeah, it's on Iron Podium. April 27th in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, it's in Jackson. Not your church is in Jacksonville. You live in Jacksonville. So sorry. Yeah. We were talking about Tallahassee earlier, and I'm like, my brain went to Tallahassee, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, Jacksonville is the 12th biggest city in the United States, so I figured we needed to have a show eventually, and it's the largest of the 48 states by land area.
Hell yeah.
And because of that, I'm also offering an award for Jacksonville's Strongest Man. So as long as you have your license in the greater Jacksonville area, the open heavyweight and the open women's will be essentially Jacksonville's, the strongest man and woman. I also have awards for Shannon Willis and Scott Helms, like in their honor. So we got those. I actually just got both those sponsored. So Cerebus, however you pronounce it, they're sponsoring Shannon's award, and then Jordan Wong, who's down in, I'm going to say it wrong, is it Fort Myers? He owns a powerlifting gym. He's sponsoring the Scott Helms Award. So I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Hell yeah, man. I mean, it sounds like a pretty badass show. Now, is this the first show that you've ever hosted or organized?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm going to be.
I mean, you've got like years and years of experience in strongman and competing at a high level at good shows. So
yeah, the handling the events and like loading charts and the things that I see as an athlete, I'm going to get. I've got my friend and training partner, John, who's helping out. He's sponsoring the show. His company is sponsoring the farmers event. He's helping me build the farmers and like the back platforms on the sandbag toss. And I'm sure we're going to be filling sandbags like way too much. I'm going to hate it. I'm never going to want to lift the sandbag again. We're actually probably going to drop sand at the church and just fill them there. So we don't have to transport them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's helping with some of the logistics.
Did we lose?
Dude, he's frozen on my end.
He is.
You need to take a screenshot of his face.
I was like, yeah. Screenshot. Here we are. I don't know how he lost him.
Yeah, I don't either.
It's like maybe it's his internet that's going down.
Maybe. Sorry, I love when freezing frozen screenshots are the best.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So let's see. Let's message him.
I got one too. I'm naming it Andrew Frozen in Time.
It's true. Oh man.
Fantastic.
It's true. It's a good one.
It's Cino Man.
Let's see. Here we are. I'm like, it's handy. Okay, he's returning.
Okay.
So his internet cut out. He's back.
Oh my gosh. That's
all right.
Just the worst timing.
All good. We got a good screenshot of you frozen in time.
Oh, good.
Like, with the worst facial expression.
There it is. That's the expression. So that way we can just.
If that's the thumbnail, I'm going to kill you guys.
Oh, man. I didn't realize that the screenshot fit exactly over the screen. So
that's awesome.
Oh, man.
Well, glad you're back.
I don't even know where I was. So
sandbags.
Yeah, sorry, we were having fun while you were gone.
I'm gonna get people from the church to help with all like the non-loading logistics, but hopefully there'll be a lot of volunteers. Just like OSG requires a lot of volunteers, and you definitely need some people with patience, which usually would be women. So I think I'm going to find some women from the church that are going to be able to handle the temper tantrums of us strongmen peoples.
Dude. Do women like teachers have like the greatest patience,
Yep.
especially like small children. Man, as a man, there's no way I could do what those women do.
Yep. Yeah, it's not one of our greatest strengths, but we can't talk about that. We don't want to talk about inequality things or.
Oh, we can admit that we're weaker in some places.
Oh, I'll admit that for sure. When people claim they can multitask, that's probably my favorite one. You can't multitask. You just like half do two things. But if there is a gender that can multitask, it's definitely women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, I'm excited. So April 27th, and I'd like to try to get down there for that. I know a few guys that would come and help, would be more than happy to come and help.
Yeah. Oh, so speaking of other things in that show, I mean, hopefully all these things can go through. I just bought a mammoth bar I got to pick up in Alabama, nice. But there's an intermission farmers hold contest. I'll probably do an intermission lift. I'm trying to get Wesley and some other pros to come out, but hopefully it'll be run 2 events as they're set at the 3rd event, intermission lift, run events 3 and 4, intermission lift, and then sandbag, and then possibly, something easy to do with the kids. So I'll probably just like call people from the crowd, like all the kids to get on the yoke and carry them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
As we're getting the scores ready. So hopefully there's about 3 times where there's some intermission, raffles, things like that. I've got a raffle set up right now. Bartos is putting an axle in. It'd be raffled. I haven't decided where the money will go. I think it's going to go to athlete prize money, though it might go to a charity. It depends on if I get the classes sponsored with prize money or not. Because I would like at least like the first place of all the non-novice classes to at least get their entry fee back,
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's always good, man. It's always weird too, depending on who you talk to. Money's not a big motivator for newer athletes, but I think if they get it, man, they're going to be ecstatic regardless, right? I just don't think they really have had any experience like winning any money. Most shows don't pay anything, right? You're just paying out. You're paying for all of your travel fees.
Right.
Like getting some money back is freaking awesome.
I mean, I'm trying to put on a really good show and people recognize that. Florida is heavily saturated, and I did pick a time 3 weeks after a major show in Miami, but even they've been affected by other shows in the spring, other shows in the summer. Obviously, we got the Arnold Classic. Not that a lot of amateurs go to the Arnold Classic, but, it's just me looking at the schedules of like where my athletes are competing, where I'm going to have to be obligated to be, what I'm going to be doing. Originally, I didn't know if I was going to be able to have it inside, so I didn't want to have it in like the freaking summertime. So it might not be the best month. Maybe next year ends up being in May or, early June or something. It did work out conveniently. It's the last week and you can qualify for USS Nationals. So it is like a last chance. So I think I got 2 athletes of mine that are coming. That's kind of like their last chance because I'm looking at taking about, I think it's like 6 to 8 people from my athlete roster actually go to Denver. I already have those flights booked,
Nice.
I'm going to go to Denver for the show and I'm going to go hiking and stuff. So I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, man.
The scenery is so beautiful out there.
It's beautiful here. I live in the Denver area. If you didn't know that, I'll be lurking around. Yeah, I'll be lurking around USS Nationals. No doubt I will run into you while you're there. But yeah, man, I'm really actually pretty excited for Nationals, for a larger competition to finally be here. I've been arguing for years, like Denver's. I mean, other than the altitude, which is hard to acclimate to. I'm not going to say otherwise. If you didn't have a problem when you were here, that's awesome. When I first moved here, man, it took me probably 3 months to acclimate to the altitude. It was brutal for me.
I think training would be different. I think it's
Maybe.
Like training's more volume. You got like, like rest periods. You might try to push the rest periods or like, you can't spend 4 hours doing a workout. But if there's an hour and a half between events,
yeah,
I don't think there's any difference. Like my whoop definitely picked up on respiratory rate being increased, possibly heart rate being increased. But it's like those things are also things that happen like when you peak for a strongman competition, right? Like supplements you're taking, not getting good sleep, just over aroused, stuff like that. Stimulants. So I probably noticed it a little bit, but it didn't affect the performance outcome, you know? And I think the mental side is like when everybody's like, oh, it's in Denver, it's gonna mess me up. I gotta get out there like 2 weeks early to acclimate. Like that stress of thinking about it is probably more than the stress of what it's causing to your body. So I was just like, you know what? I'm in shape. It's only, I mean, it's freaking strong, man. We're not going for more than 90 seconds. It'll be fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That's fair enough. I guess I did compete here way back, like 2 years before I moved here. I don't remember. That was like 2010. Honestly, don't remember how it affected me. I did really well. But yeah, when I moved here, yeah, training wise, man, it was hard to acclimate. Always lightheaded. But otherwise, Denver is basically in the very center of the country. I think actually the geographic center of North America is only like 300 miles to the west or the east.
Which is funny because Ohio's the hub logistically for the center of the country, I think.
Right.
Like trucking and stuff. So
Sure. Yeah, but the geographic center, I think, is in Kansas.
okay.
So we're basically like not far from the geographic center. So why aren't there more shows in Denver? I've always kind of wondered that, like especially big shows.
It's a hub for
rather than being.
It's a hub for Southwest. Southwest, like it's a hub, and you can fly with bags there. So like it makes, yeah. I mean, like I already booked the flights, and it was cheaper than going to. There's a show I want to do out west, and I've already got the flights for those, and it was cheaper than that, even though I booked it way closer. So it's I mean,
super accessible. Super accessible, and I mean for like national type competitions, like America's Strongest Man, whatever. Rather than everybody having to go to like one coast or the other, we go to the center of the freaking country.
Right. I mean, we'll say like Orlando had the Olympia and stuff, and that did make sense because obviously Florida wasn't locked down. It's a big area; it has a lot of stuff to do. You're less than 90 minutes from a beach. But I mean, I like going to Denver because obviously there's all the hiking things. And like, I only went to Estes Park last time, but like you can go in any direction, right? And find a hike or a peak or something. So you could essentially, I'm revisiting it and I'm going to get to go somewhere else. You know what I mean? So it seems pretty budget friendly. I mean, trying to think of nationals. There are some nationals like 2012, 2013 that I did, and they were just not in the best places to do anything. But I also never really plan anything after shows. But that's kind of my thing now is to try to get a couple of days after, like especially if I'm competing because I'm taking off work, I want to be able to go do something fun. If it's me helping athletes, I'll probably still have to take off or tone back work just so I can be with them. But I mean, I want to do like at least a hike or go to like an art museum or something to be like, hey, I went to that city and ate their food or art museum, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Denver is a great city, man. I mean, there's so much to do here. And then, like you said, like the hiking is just inexhaustible. I mean, what you can do here. Estes Park is gorgeous. Rocky Mountain National Park is amazing, which is up by Estes. Get down around Colorado Springs. I mean, there's just like endless hiking opportunities all over the state, man.
Right.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. Yeah, there's no beaches, but we've got other nature that is amazing, right?
I don't need sand. I'm fine. I've been in Florida almost my whole life, so I have enough sand.
Yeah,
I want rocks. I want quiet.
Exactly. Well, it's hard to find quiet in Colorado. I'm gonna tell you that because there's so many freaking people. You can't get away from people here very easily. But
on those hikes, like the hard hikes, there aren't as many people because they just do like a little half-hour one. So if you do a long one, like it's you and a couple couples maybe at the end. Like hopping in the springs and stuff. That's why the last time I was there, just freaking strip down, hop in the spring, and then, try to drive as best I could and walk back. Yeah. So
yeah, man. Yeah, if you're willing to go to like some of the more extreme 14ers,
that's actually the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll get away from most people, but there'll still be somebody.
Yeah. Okay, well then I'll just be smoking a cigar. So then if they don't like that, they'll be far away from me.
There you go.
I'll just look really upset.
There you go. Just look angry. They'll avoid you. Yeah, man.
Usually it's the opposite. They come and ask me, like, are you a Viking? I mean, it's so weird, man. People come up to you, like, I'm like, look the most unapproachable sometimes, and that's when I'm the most approached. I don't know.
Right.
There's just no, filter on people anymore. They just, go up to anyone,
Oh yeah, man. Especially if you look like you lift weights, like I get like the most just like always, I can't go anywhere. And somebody
Well,
makes some like weird comment to me.
I just flew and I was surprised. 3 people asked me if I was a powerlifter or strongman. Now, given I
Nice.
had an SPD belt wrapped around my backpack, but still, I do get bodybuilder a lot. So one time it was on the shuttle, and I was like, "What made you think that?" And she's like, "Well, I did bodybuilding, so I could just tell by your physique." I'm like, "Oh, that's actually kind of a compliment because it probably is like, my arms aren't huge. I'm not super lean." But like, I like to think like back and neck are a giveaway and stuff like that,
Right. Yeah.
and general kind of like SpongeBob build, very blocky. So
I have never, ever traveling or anywhere had anybody ask me if I'm a strongman or a powerlifter. It's almost
3
always
times, same trip.
it's almost always MMA or football player.
Wrestler.
That's what I get a lot. Yeah, MMA. Like I had this woman one time. I was on a flight to LA or back. I can't remember, but she was convinced that I was a famous MMA fighter, and I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm just
signing
some
autographs.
dude.
You started signing autographs.
Yeah, right. I had a guy one time, actually in LA. I land. I'm getting my car, my rental, and he was convinced that I was a famous actor. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm just a dude. And he like upgraded me to a BMW just because he was like convinced that I was famous. And I'm like, dude, I'm not nobody.
That worked.
Yeah, man. But yeah, it's weird being a physically fit and built individual in today's society. Like you said, people don't have filters. They just like come up to you and just ask you all kinds of questions all the time and make assumptions. And yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's going to the grocery stores and seeing the general decay of society, and then just seeing like on social media too. It's just, oh man, we could rant about this for a long time. You already know I could, but it's just sad. Just like the morals are going down the drain, and then just people aren't physically fit, and you can just tell that they're just like finding some type of like easy high,
right?
Like,
and that's it.
Yeah, and it's anything. It's food, lust, like being lazy. Like just being lazy is an easy way to be high. Like like, oh, I don't want to work a lot, And so you get people that are like working a dead end job, that are door dashing every day, that are playing video games, that are not in wholesome relationships and stuff. And it's just like, what are you even doing? And then there's from like a evolutionary standpoint, like we're using resources to keep these people around. And like, I mean, I'm not saying we need to get rid of people, but like you need to like show some value to other people around you. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just
unfortunately, we live in a society where our basic necessities are very, very easily obtained. And so people by and large, I think, don't have any incentive, right, to seek that like alternate, like what was Atlas Power Shrug talking about here recently was like the it's so I don't know, I can't spit out the word, but like having like sort of like fake struggle, right? And like people are trying to find ways to, goals and struggle that's not real, right? We're not struggling to survive or to meet our basic necessities.
Well, that's what we do with training.
That's what we do with training, right?
People want to feel like they're doing something extremely hard, sweating a lot, being out of breath. And like as a personal trainer, I got that. They want to feel like they're in the suck, like real suck. But the reality is they're going to hop into a nice car with AC. They're going to go to a nice house, and maybe they can't afford it. Maybe they're dead up to their eyeballs or something. But like in general, their life is very like cushy and easy. And like I recognize that about my life. I basically just can sit at home and work and train, and it's easy. So I sometimes have to like purposely put things that are kind of like difficult in place. I think that's why we do better like when we're on like an eating plan and training plan, and we're trying to set goals, PRs or whatever. Maybe this is Lent right now, right? Like people are like abstaining from certain things because that like builds more endurance to be able to like handle hard things. Because if you give in right away to anything, then you haven't built like any ability to like suffer or enjoy it, right? Like that's what drugs are.
Yep, exactly.
You get high on a drug and then you get another drug, you want more of it, you want more of it, you want more of it. And then by the end, you're on the most drugs you've ever been, but you're enjoying it the least. And,
Right.
and that's what happens with people with all these things. Like if you go out to eat once every month, and that tastes really good. But if you go out every day, like you don't even enjoy it anymore, you're blowing money on it. So
Yeah. It was artificial activity. That's what I think I was trying to say.
Yeah. I was trying to think because it was that post because he was talking about how so many people talk about like do cold showers, do cold plunges, like do all these hard things. And one of the things he was saying, he was like, what's really hard is like making yourself read every day, getting better at your job, like getting physically fit, like doing like some of the basics, like that's hard enough. You don't need to necessarily manufacture these things of like, do you need to do a cold plunge if you're not even doing your basic responsibilities?
Well, being productive. Alex Moses says like the big thing is how little do you have to do to get into like your work zone. So like a lot of people are like, well, I got to get up early. I got to do 30 minutes of cardio and a cold shower. And, I got to eat a breakfast that has this, and this. But there are some days I wake up and I'm like, I need to get to work right now. And I eat a protein bar, have an energy drink, pop some nicotine in, and then I work for 2 hours. And that means I worked within 30 minutes of getting up for 2 hours. And I'm ahead of the person that took 2.5 hours to do all their routine stuff. And I'm not saying that's the best. Like I probably should go outside and take a walk and eat a real breakfast. But in certain situations, that's the play is like how little prep do you need to get in the work zone? And like, I'm big on like flow state and deep work. Like those are very like, I don't like this idea of being a workaholic because most of the time you're just really inefficient. So like if somebody can do their job in 3 hours and that's 2 bursts in 90 minutes, which is sometimes what I do is just really focus 2 bursts of 90 minutes, all my computer work. And then it's on my phone or answering clients. Like that is efficiency. And that's how work should be. But we reward people that work at a very slow and inefficient pace. And they're like, well, I worked a 10 or 12 hour day. I'm like, well, cool. What's your production? Like, what do you have to show at the end of the day? And I can show them the same thing that I have. And it's the same. So it's our culture has been, elevated to like, everything's got to suck. It's got to be 12 hours. It's got to be grind. I mean, even with working out, like I saw or heard on Stronger by Science podcast, there's a study that says you only have to do 1/10 your training volume to maintain your muscle mass. And like, think about it. Like we're in strongman, like we do like really difficult like events. I'm sure that's true. I mean, imagine hitting like 1 top set of press, do like 1 hard set of pull-ups, and then do like 2 or 3 sets of body weight exercises, like back to back, get a pump and go inside. 45-minute workout 3 times a week. And then just be an active human being. I guarantee that most strongmen would maintain most of their muscle mass, especially if they're eating the same. Like 100%. And people think you need to do, you need to do like 30 sets, 3-hour workouts. I mean, everybody always asks at the airport, like, oh, you must train all the time. And I'm like, dude, I probably train like 3 or 4 times a week, if that. Like,
less is more, man. I think like the older I get, the more I realize less is more. And it always sort of kind of baffles me when you hear this so much from athletes is like, they feel like they're losing ground and they're getting beat up and like they're missing lifts and they're feeling like sluggish and slow. And it's like, well, when's the last time you took a day off?
Yeah.
Like, or like, it always astonishes me when people go into a big competition and they're surprised because their deadlift was better at competition than in training. And I'm like, well, how much time did you take off? They're like, a week. And I'm like, well, you're fucking recovered. Like,
right.
Like recovery is so like, people don't understand. Like you can't just keep your body out of homeostasis day after day after day and never recover and expect to get stronger. Like less is really a lot more. Like stimulate the stimulus, and then rest and recovery. Right.
I mean, look at it from like, I'll use overhead press since I seem to understand that. So like a lower body weight athlete, less experience. Let's say they could do overhead press 3 times a week, right? They're doing heavy, moderate, and then like highly skilled lift. So maybe on their event day, they're doing like circus dumbbell or like log, but a 1 motion or something like that. And then they have like a more static day, but they're doing like form work on push press. And then they have their push press day. So they got 3 days. So they got a lot of press volume, blah, blah, blah. As they get stronger, they probably have to drop that 3rd day. And then as they get even stronger, if they go heavy on strict press on Monday, can they do that on push on push press on Thursday. And what I'm noticing is I can roll a couple weeks in a row, but it catches up to me. And also the number of sets I need to do could be as little as 3 sets of push press. And even then, it's really about the top set. Like I rest sometimes like 7 to 10 minutes between sets because one, I'm on medication that sedates me, which freaking sucks. And we can talk about that. But and then also I'm not very conditioned, but I want to get a high quality set, and that stimulus is going to be so much higher. So like I push press 405 for 6. If I left the gym after that set, I just did a really good set. But if I did like 5 sets of 6 at 335, it'd be more volume, but it wouldn't be the same thing. Like I wouldn't be stronger the next week. And I think prioritizing those top sets and prioritizing high quality reps, I'm really big into like inverting volume. So once people get really sloppy and they're doing like 3 sets of 5, okay, we're gonna do 5 sets of 3, same weight though. Oh, but that's gonna be easy. Yeah, exactly. Your third rep every set's gonna end like a smoke show. And then you just accumulate 15 high quality reps. The volume is the same, so you're gonna recover the same, if not better, and then your confidence is higher. But yeah, alternating structure works well for that, alternating which one's heavy on a given week. So as you progress from going from 3 days to 2 days, you might go to still 2 days, but one's speed and one's heavy, and then you flip them the next week. And that's what I'm looking at doing for my overhead presses, is doing like a paused week or a lighter week or like a rebound week that's lighter, and then doing a heavy week that has like one top set, and then based on the top set, dropping 10% and matching the reps for 2 sets, maybe 3 sets. And I don't really plan out my training like I have like general parameters. So like at the top set of 5, cool, I'm doing 3 sets of 5. But if it's 6, I'm doing 3 sets of 6. Or if the top set goes to 8 for whatever reason, I'm like, oh, I didn't plan on that. Well, maybe I'm just doing 1 down set because it was more reps than I thought. And I think that's where like I guess experience comes in, is knowing like what stimulus you need to get for the day. Like if you've already hit it, especially like in bodybuilding, if you no longer have a pump, you've probably been in the gym too long. And we've all been there, right? Like you're flat. You probably just leave the gym and eat. And maybe if you feel better in the evening, like, go ahead and go back and do that work. If you don't, roll into the next day and be able to attack that day. But so many people just go flat, or they do extra volume and they're just running themselves in the ground and ingraining poor movement patterns and affecting their next session. Yeah. And they're wondering why the guy like me, who's doing lower volume, less consistently, like not doing nearly as long of workouts or as often, is doing better, because it's all high quality work and good stimulus.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you 100%. And I guess my kind of perspective too, the way I've been looking at training for a long time too, is that you need the stimulus, obviously, but the gains aren't made in the gym. They're made in rest and recovery, right? That's the way I've always kind of looked at it, because it kind of gets back to me when I say less is more. Like training 3 days a week, like you said, like less volume, higher quality reps, but giving yourself that time to recover, and not going maxing out every time you train, right, leads to much better gains through that recovery process.
Yep. I mean, you don't have to go heavy to enforce the motor patterns. Like you could do empty barbell work, or like 30 to 50%. 100%. I mean, I have guys doing empty log every day, practicing just how to push press better. And I know that's not going to affect their recovery. I mean, if you're doing a front squat workout and you clean the log and do like 5 sets of 3 with an 85-pound log, and you're practicing your split jerk, cool, you're just warming up your knees a little bit more. Yep. Now you go front squat and you're fine. But if you're trying to do 80% to 90% of log 3 times a week, yeah, that might work for like a really like acute block. Sure. But then what's going to happen when you have one bad workout, then another bad workout? Okay, now you're really fatigued. And now, even though when you come off that, when you take away that fatigue, you might be stronger. You also have to look at, like, a lot of these athletes, their mentality has to be maintained. So how many bad workouts can an athlete tolerate before they're like mentally not in the zone anymore? So we theoretically could go into a really deep hole of like being overtrained and then super compensate and be really strong, right? But I know for me, it'd probably be 2 workouts and I'd be like, I am not in the right place. We need to turn this around. But who knows? Maybe if I had sucked it up and done 3 workouts, highly fatigued, then the super compensation would be bigger. So I have athletes that I don't want them to ever feel like they're not getting stronger. So I just don't allow them to ever get that fatigue. And maybe that's not the best way to get them stronger, because they're not accumulating as much volume. But when your mind's in the sport, like, you do way better than when you're trying to like justify scientific reasoning, right?
I agree. 100%, man. And I push this book for pretty frequently on our show is Randall Strawson's crap. I need to look it up. Blanking on that too now. I think it's Stronger Minds, Stronger Bodies.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
It's all about the psychological effect of missing reps, right? And how like mind over matter is really it's strongest when you have a very positive outlook on training. And when you and you walk away multiple days, like you're saying from training in failure, it affects your emotional and psychological state for the next time you go into training.
Yep.
Like it's so important to always walk away with a win.
Well, that's why you want to end on a good note. And I get that from my mom teaching piano, right? Like, so that's like something that obviously doesn't have a recovery thing, right? It's not like you're going to play piano so much that you're like, can't move your fingers, right? But like if you're trying to learn a piece, you want to finish at a point where you've mastered part of the piece or the whole piece or whatever, right? So like a good example in strongman is like a throw event. I give an athlete like 10 to 12 total throws and they hit 8 of them and then they miss and they miss and they make and then they miss. So they ended on a miss and they had 3 or 4 misses. That's not a big deal. It's more technique. Maybe they're missing in front. So it's not that they're like straining themselves, but I'll tell them, hey, make sure you end on a make. So whatever form issue comes up, make sure you figure that out, whether it's needing to go lighter or needing to take a longer rest or needing to review your videos. Like I might want you to do it on an EMOM, but if you start missing reps, then move it to 90 seconds and make that correction, because that in the moment correction is gonna be so beneficial for the next, for the next workout. Now for a heavier lift, if you're pulling a deadlift and you overshoot your top set, this is why I like ranges. If I give you a top set of 2 and you overshoot, you only get 1, you miss, now you're not confident. But if I give you a top set of 2 to 4 and you shoot for 4, but you overshoot, you hit 2 or 3 and you're still in my target range. So it's building those parameters to allow the athlete to always end on a good note. And then also teach them how to auto-regulate things. So like if I'm going up to, whatever I want to do, and it turns out this is not the day to do it, then I need to pivot it to make sure I get quality work in and I end on a good note. So if I wanted to go up to a heavy set of 3 on deadlifts and it just feels like crap, then maybe I do a lighter set where I pause every rep. So I work on my position because that's what's getting screwed up, and I get a little bit more volume in. So instead of 3 sets of 3, it's like 5 sets of 3. Like these are just like random things I might have done recently. But yeah, so those types of auto-regulation to end on a good note, I think is key. When it comes to missing lifts, I do accept missing lifts if they're highly technical. So I've noticed one recently is the axle off pins or axle off jerk blocks, because how you roll it in and where your feet are in balance. So I've told my clients it catches up really quick. So I've literally done a set and gone up 20 pounds and missed. So I do a set like 4 or 5, go 20 pounds, I missed because the roll in on the first rep was like not the same. So usually I keep their rep ranges like 3 to 6, because if they were trying to work into a single, they would hit like what they think is RP 8, and 5 pounds more would be a miss. Yeah. So it's just knowing the exercise and knowing which things are highly technical. So if I miss on a thruster, or if I miss on a split jerk, or if I miss on a dumbbell press, those are more technical and more acceptable than like missing on like a back squat, Right. Like, yeah, you could have misgrooved it, but also like you probably just like weren't strong enough to, be in position.
Right. Absolutely. Dude, I hear you on the thrusters. I've never had boxes that I can roll. I'm always on like soft pads. and it's even, I don't know, I think it's even harder sometimes to get under the bar, especially when you're doing reps, because it just doesn't land right in your feet. Like you have to move, like readjust. And man, I can't tell you the number of times I've missed easy reps because of like just the bar was not in the right position.
So I know something really tiny is because we use axles that aren't like real bars, and the bumper plates are rubber. This is actually a hack. I told Frank Pro and Johnny Alamo this when we were doing push press together. People put their clips on really tight and the plates don't rotate. Okay, that's cool. If we're cleaning the implement and it has no rotation, like we need to get used to that. But from the rack, I like to scoop it with a roll. So I actually put my clips a 1/4 inch off the plates, and I'll spin the plates before I go to make sure they can rotate and make sure there's no give and make sure they're even. So what I've noticed is since my axle is hollow and there's a pretty good amount of distance between the plates, sometimes they'll just get cockeyed like this.
Right.
That's why they're not rolling straight, because they're not straight up and down. So I'll literally double check all those things, and I'll pick the bar up and put it down to make sure they stay flat. But yeah, like even just allowing yourself to use a bar that rotates can help with like positioning on the rack position. Because when you take a bar from the rack, what are you working? You're working the press, not the clean. So you need to worry about the fixed nature more so on the clean and closer competition. But if you're trying to develop your pressing strength and overload that component, why would you put the clips on so tight that when you roll it out of the rack, the plates aren't moving with you?
Right.
So,
Makes sense. Yeah.
Because I think that talking about like the confidence thing, because it really is like you want people to generally feel good about what they're doing, like not to like that you always have to feel good, but I'm always amazed at the people who I'll see who are like posting pretty big misses almost weekly of like overshooting and stuff. And it's like, yeah, it looks cool to like always do the heaviest stuff or whatever you can for Instagram, but you're like, not everyone's Jamal Browner who can somehow pull like a 2,000 pound total almost every training week and stuff. But even looking at him, the people don't always realize is he only lifts 3 days a week and stuff. Like some people, they'll always talk, they're like, well, pros must be lifting like 6 intense days or something, or like every single day. And you're like, no, that's an insane thing.
Look at the volume he does warming up too. It's so minimal.
Yeah.
He does a bunch of singles, and he's so technically efficient that he's not wasting a lot of volume on that. And it seems like a lot of these guys are doing minimal volume, high quality work on the power lifts, and then just like crushing it on like 2 to 3 bodybuilding lifts, each workout, and then resting, and then going back to that. So people think like their heavy lifts are what build them, but like I'd be hard pressed to think these guys are so jacked off of like sets of 1 to 3. Like you can maintain your muscle, but they're definitely building it on hypertrophy related exercises with external stability, with low fatigue for like the nervous system, right? They're like, it's supported, it's braced, those types of things.
That's true. And that is something to note of like not taking insane amount of steps. Because once you get that heavy, you really can't be just taking 50-pound steps up to 900 pounds.
Yeah, no.
And doing like all those as working sets. And I think oftentimes there is this like weird kind of like you were saying about like the amount of work people do and stuff. Because there is this weird thing of some people like brag about consistently taking 3 or 4 hours in the gym 5 days a week. You're like, that's 20 hours of your life that like, hopefully you're amazing at this because that's a part-time job right there.
Yeah.
You should be like, that's a part-time job that most likely you're not getting paid for and probably losing what some people might be making in a part-time job each month doing that. So,
well, there is one downside of getting stronger is you need more rest between those top sets. That's like that's probably the biggest thing. But also those top sets give you more output and neurologically give you more. So it's kind of like an inverse related thing, right? So like you can hit one top set on deadlift when you're really, really strong, and that could be all you need to do for the day. But when you're a less experienced lifter, if you only maxed out, you're alternating weeks of maxing out and you only do one top set, that means you've only worked your form in 80 to 100%, like for 1 or 2 sets every other week. So how are you going to like maintain that? So that was a big error I made when I was younger, was like training like guys that have the stimulus of like an 800 to 900 pound deadlift. I didn't have that. I had a 600. So I needed more volume, more frequency, like a 4-week block and then deload, versus alternating weeks. But now on certain strongman events, definitely alternating weeks. Like you're not going to forget how to do a yoke walk. You're not going to forget how to do a farmer. So if you can use other exercises for grip stimulus instead, and then bring up your weak points instead of just bashing the events all the time, that helps a lot.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of that. I think the more elite athlete you become, the less sports specificity that you should be focusing on. Because I mean, if you don't know how to do a yoke walk by now, then what the fuck you been doing all these years, right? Yeah, you're not going to forget how to do that, and it's so taxing on your CNS, your posterior chain. I mean, just wrecks your joints. I'd like to just not do yoke very often anymore and just focus on weak points. I find out, I mean, as long as I'm strong walking in, like I'm going to do just as good, if not better, on yoke by not training it as much as when I was younger, training it every week. And just wrecking myself.
I think the gait related movements do need to be trained in some capacity. Sure. But you can pull them back by doing like holds at the start, doing like a slow controlled walks, like, belt lifts with a lot less weight.
Sure.
You can put a band around the hips and have that cue, actually pushing your hips forward and do it wider that way. Speed yoke, not a big fan of that just because a lot of people aren't at that level yet. I would say most of the people, they're just trying to finish their yoke walks at the given weight. They're not really at the level where they can apply a ton of forward force. Yeah, there's just so many different ways there's so many ways that you can train people. And when people ask me as a coach, because that's the biggest question I get at the beginning is what's your philosophy or how do you train people? It's go from where they're at and make minor adjustments and keep momentum. So somebody asks me, well, what block are we in? I honestly don't know. And what I mean by that is wherever you were, why would I flip the script? Maybe if you just came off a contest, yeah, I'm going to go to an eccentric heavy block or higher volume block or a block based on trying to ingrain positions over being good at the next events coming up. So it's not that I'm just throwing random stuff in there. But if we constantly change it based on arbitrary block lengths, were we ever creating momentum? So if you're getting really good momentum off these 3 movements I'm having you do on press day, and it's the end of 4 weeks, and now we're supposed to transition to whatever phase or whatever, but we're still making progress, why don't I just keep driving down that road until that one gets to a dead end, and then we can turn and go somewhere else? Yep. So I think that's something that's different is when I program in the off season or when there's not a timeline, so to speak, you're programming as you go. You only program backwards when there's a contest. And even there, you don't necessarily need to program backwards all the way, because if the athlete goes in, like you said, with confidence and they're gradually getting towards it, maybe they don't hit contest weight, but they've creeped up every week. Versus we plan backwards and we got to do contest yoke 3 weeks out. And 3 weeks out, they just shit the bed and they can't do it. When I just wasted their last stimulus, but if I had programmed forward, maybe all things were pointing to an 80 to 90% contest yoke 3 weeks out. And then we do a static hold or a static pick with 100%. And they're like, oh yeah, that's not as heavy as I thought it was going to be. Cool. Now you go into the show and you feel confident.
Yeah.
So when people ask that question, I would say one thing a lot of coaches do is they flip the script, change all their stuff, change what days their lifts are on, and they make it just chaotic for the person to train normally. They're trying to train between 3 different gyms or something ridiculous. I'm like, no, you're doing this accessory and this accessory. Okay, let's add a tempo of this one, and let's change the range of motion on this one, or let's make this one unilateral. But their day might look almost exactly the same volume, but it's putting those little details in and then making sure they're keeping momentum without overanalyzing everything. Everybody wants to overanalyze every little thing. And the better you get as a coach, the more you realize it's really the basics. So I used to write a lot more details on things, and now I write less. And I think that's just the irony is the less feedback your coach has to give you, probably the better you're doing.
Yeah.
I watched their video. I'm like, yeah, that was good bar speed. Just keep it up. That means you're doing a really good job. That means I'm not seeing anything.
Hell yeah. I like the idea of that momentum too. It's I've been a long time advocate of unplanned deload days versus you said, plan a deload day. If your athlete or you yourself, you've got great momentum and you're still feeling good, why waste that opportunity to put in good quality work? It doesn't make any sense to me.
And there's plenty of deloads, like I talked about some numerous podcasts. There's plenty of deloads. I mean, it's going to be life. You're going to miss a session, somebody's sick, have to work long hours, the gym's closed for a meet. So let those be your little deloads or unexpected off times. And then when you have access, crush it. And the only time you really need to go against that is 2 to 4 weeks out from the competition. So obviously if you have momentum 9 days out, don't hit a max yoke, but you might do speed yoke as opposed to not doing yoke at all because you're, based on how fresh you are and stuff like that. Or one thing I've started doing, I made a post about it, is one of my typical go-tos was more of a speed based, upper body day, 5 to 7 days out. But I noticed that if their last stimulus on upper body, say with a clean or whatever in the contest format, was too far away, if it was just speed those last, week to week and a half, then they haven't hit anything with a high enough weight. So I'll have them do a really fast single just to get that neurological, heavier weight, and then drop down and do their speed work. So they might do with bands, 70% for a single. So it's probably 80% at the top, but then their speed work would be 50%. So it's 60% at the top, and it'll be 4 to 5 sets of 3, try to move as fast as you can. So they got a little bit of extra stimulus just to stay primed at that heavier load. And that kind of is going to carry on longer because that speed work is probably going to detrain in like 3 to 5 days, but that single probably going to maintain them for at least a week. But again, that's very dependent on the athlete, what they did the last 2 or 3 weeks, how fast they recover, how much weight that 80% is. If it's a 400-pound overhead press, so I don't want him doing a 290 push press against 30 pounds of bands 5 days out. Like I just rather him just like rest or go in the gym and do some like light pause push press just to make sure everything feels, good in the rack position.
Right. Yeah.
That is good. I mean, the main thing is the whole point of having a real coach and a coach is that someone who programs dynamically and stuff. Like I'm always amazed at people who pay for coaching, who essentially the coach has this like 12-week, pretty rigid plan. It's like, hopefully they're not charging you too much more than a $30 PDF with just percents written on it. Like, because so many times you're like, because I've seen one of my friends a while back, his coach would routinely do things like program comp weight, like always trying to get comp weight like exactly 2 weeks out. But if someone had a really hard week at work or whatever, it's going to destroy your confidence if Strongman Saturday, 2 weeks out from your show, you're just missing everything and everything feels too heavy. You're like, well, that's going to be a problem. So it's always interesting when people will talk about their program. They'll be like, well, like life's been happening and all this stuff, but I got it done. And it's like, but you missed all your things. You feel kind of terrible. You've like, that day probably overall has hurt your contest prep more than helped it. If suddenly you're like doing this stuff that they're like, I don't know what happened. Like, I know I didn't sleep well last night because my cat was really sick and like all this, you're like, you probably shouldn't have like done something different. So at least you're not like, I don't know. There is that fear. And I think it's especially in like newer lifters is that sense of like the fear of falling off the wagon. And it's like, unless you're really, really new at this, there isn't that fear of falling off the wagon. Taking a day not to do your overhead pressing because you didn't sleep it all the night before and work's been really stressful. That's probably way better for you than to miss all your 80% things because you just weren't feeling it.
Yep.
And we don't talk enough. I don't think that like we don't talk enough in the strength community about how dynamic most people's lives actually are, right? A lot of times coaches are trying to like plaster this linear programming against somebody's very dynamic life. And, and like John's saying, like life happens, or like you said, Andrew, life happens, man. I mean, we got, most people have families to worry about. They've got jobs. Like the vast majority of us aren't professional full-time athletes that have the luxury of making sure that our sleep is highest quality. Like we're getting all of our meals in every day. Our only focus and worry is training, right? The vast majority of people don't have that. And it's so important for like when you're coaching I think even most strongman athletes fall into the general population because they're not full-time athletes. There's got to be consideration for those occurrences where things are just like not going to line up. The stars aren't going to line up. And so that's where I'm going to get back. What's that?
I'm pretty close to what one would say. Like, my job allows me to be at home and I have a full gym. Sure. So like examples for me is like, if I travel, okay, that's stressful. Sometimes I have to move my Saturday workout to Friday. And because my Thursday workout's so hard, it's going to affect Friday or, that I moved it to Friday. Or maybe like this competition, obviously in a competition, you do a full body thing. So even though I'm not really peaking for it, I'm going to do a press there. So now my Monday press session, instead of going heavy, maybe I do speed work or maybe I just do my accessories. So it's just kind of like flowing with it and trying to figure out how I can stack the stimulus. Like if I'm going to be with a training group, I don't want to have that session be a deload session. So I will maybe deload the squat workout right before it. So my overhead press session feels better, and those things can be done, like you said, not linearly. They can kind of be put in place as needed. So it's kind of like the fallback plan. Like I have and maybe we'll change the topic off this after this, but like, he's a physical therapist and he's been getting knee pain on deadlifts. So we've been using squat to drive his progress because ironically he can squat with no pain. He's using good mornings for most of the posterior chain development. And then he's doing whatever we can figure out to train that movement pattern of deadlift. So I said the hierarchy is something like this, something with the eccentric or a pause, full range of motion. If that doesn't work, let's cut the range of motion, RDL, either with a pause or eccentric. If that doesn't work, our fallback plan is like you mentioned, BFR, because that's going to help maintain muscle, but it's also going to be the lowest load that we want it because it's like 30% of the max. So it goes through a hierarchy of trying to maintain the work capacity and the intensity, and you just kind of trickle down to where it hits and it's no longer causing over a 3 out of 10 pain. So given on the day, that might vary. So some days he might be able to do an RDL with a pause, and other days he's doing like 3 sets of 10 with BFR cuffs, or well, technically BFR protocol is 20, 15, 15, 15. But if you did that with RDL, you'd be smoked. So maybe he does something different. But like having that autonomy for the athlete to make the decision is really good, especially when he's a physical therapist. You know what I mean? So let him use his skill set, and I just give him the parameters to stay in. And I've said this on other podcasts, I assume my athletes are intelligent. If you are smart enough to hire a coach and you are invested enough to pay top dollar for said coach, I would be hard pressed to think you're trying to go in the gym and do dumb stuff. So if I say, hey, I trust your judgment on how you auto regulate this, here are some parameters, have at it. I can't think of many times where somebody did something just like off the wall ridiculous. Like, yeah, your freaking knees were hurting, but I just did bands and chains with max squats to like a low box. Like, what? It's always reasonable. They're like, yeah, I decided to drop the weight and add a pause. Cool, perfect.
Right.
You did, and your pain level was lower, you accomplished the goal. You did the movement pattern, it's loaded, and you ingrained the bottom position, which is usually the weakest, golden.
And I think that's like when you give parameters and sort of template formats versus specific percentages and rep ranges, you're kind of empowering your clients and your athletes to have that autonomy and say, hey, you don't have to hit like X percent this day if you're not feeling it, right?
I just told someone who has 2 competitions coming up. I said, you want to be strong 2 times this year. Competitions. That's it. The only time you have to be strong. You can have 80% feel like an RP9, but if on game day, that weight feels like an RP6 and it's flying, you accomplish the goal. And that is really hard to accept losing all the training, because we get way more gratification posting on Instagram or training lists and more total likes, right? Like I'll post a contest list, or like if I won a contest, and I have to look at these analytics because it's part of my business. But like I have more likes and shares and stuff off of like one-off impressive training lists than I do any contest. And those contests will run pretty well and stuff. I did a good job, but that's just how it is. So I do the heavy sandbag to my shoulder, huge, blows up. Like one of the biggest posts I have. I win a show by like 14 points, less exposure. So
I wonder why that is. Though. Like that
sandbag video is pretty dope though.
I mean, it is dope. It is dope. But I mean, it may be because it's a little bit more intimate, right? It's just you in the sandbag. You're right in the center of the screen. Everybody understands.
Yeah.
I think the vast majority of people understand the difficulty of that, and you make it look difficult. Where when you go to compete, there's more people on the field. You're a little further away, and you're smoking the shit out of it, and it looks easy, right? Maybe.
Yeah, I think the sandbag, because most people watch only about 10 to 15 seconds. So I took a risk putting the lead up in there because of the song and just like the hype and everything. I'm sure if I edited it to be shorter, it might have actually gotten more views. But yeah, I mean, I don't have my shirt on. I have a good thumbnail. It's heavy. It has the weight listed, has music, it has intensity. It's kind of hyped up stuff. It shows the form. It's intimate, because all sandbag is intimate. It's just making love to the sandbag. You're trying to get that sandbag on your shoulder. You got to like caress it and hold it. Say, okay, just go up there with me. That's pretty much what I do to the sandbag. That's why I have the audio so loud. It's like I'm just whispering to it to convince it needs to go up to my shoulder.
Yeah.
But that's a really good, like I really like that event, because I think it just shows how an athlete that's not very strong, because I'm not the strongest, I'm able to put my body in the positions that allow me to express the strength needed to get to my shoulder. So I'm not knocking like heavyweight guys, but so many of them are just brute strong, and they advertise this brute strength as being like what they need to have. But like freaking Kielikowski is not the strongest at all the static lifts, but he is like the perfect mix of dynamic, athlete, mobile, and everything. And that's why he wins events just like that. That's why he is able to position his body to express the strength. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get that sandbag vertical. And I'll go ahead and put this in here because this is important because everybody likes this. You want to get that sandbag vertical, because force goes down. So if it goes forward, it's pulling you forward. If it goes into you, it's pushing you back. If it's vertical, you could rest probably 1,000 pounds across your lap. Like people do Zerchers all the time and set the bar on their lap, right? And it doesn't feel great because it's digging into your quad, but like that's not that hard. That's not the hard part. The hard part's the pick and then the getting it up. So if you think about it, that's the easy part of the sandbag. Get it vertical, and then what you do is, and I put it in a video, is everybody wants to be in the middle. Right. If you're in the middle, you can only have half and half. But if you slide down a little bit more, you have more on the top end. Well, that's going to help push it over your shoulder. So if it's vertical, it won't tilt anywhere, even though your hand's lower because it's vertical. Now, if it's tilting forward and you move your hand down, what is it going to do? It's going to fall forward. If it's tilting into you and you move your hand down, it's going to fall into you more. So it's all about getting vertical, sliding one hand down, and then the other hand is cupping at the bottom. And that's why I missed my world record, is because the sandbag was wet at the bottom and I couldn't cup it as well. And then the bag wasn't as firm, so I couldn't slide down the bag and it didn't slide up me as well. But I'm very confident I could have gotten it if it was in a smaller bag, because I did get it vertical. I did have the set. And if I had more weight on this side, once I get to this point where I could get two hands to give it a pull and up, it's good. But yeah, a lot of people, they grab their hands like a stone. It's different. The same side is about just lower than midway down. Other side is cupping. And this allows you to get a longer pull, because this arm can't pull anymore here. I'm all the way externally rotated, but this arm can keep pulling up. And it's a jump, full extension. So yeah, if anybody needs help on sandbag, just send me your videos, because it is an art. And if you do it in a way that's patient and coordinated, it feels so easy. Like the warm up before that world record attempt was 370. It was like RP5. Nice. Because that bag was the perfect bag. It's a 160 bag and it's packed well. And that should be a heavy bag, right? But it's like literally like once it's in my lap, I'm like, oh, this is just gonna walk up by itself. Yeah.
I think it's so important to like recognize that bag can make or break your ability to shoulder. Like I did a couple of years ago for the OSG online qualifier. I think I did a 386 sandbag to shoulder, but I also had a 330 that I couldn't shoulder to save my life because it was so sloppy and floppy. It was crazy, so hard.
People can stop filling the bags what they're based on and fill them to max capacity. That's my opinion. And so buy whatever brand you want. I'm not supporting any one brand or not. Figure out what X bag weight is if you just jam it fully packed, and then use that just like on stones, right? Like once you know what the concrete alone is, you can put foam insert or weight. In sandbag, you put mulch, or I like using plates. I stack them and make a core. So the one I did the 441 on had 100 pounds, I think, in it, and it's like dead center. Nice. So yeah, but then the other one I just tried on the world record, I tried to have it slightly towards the top, but it just moved around too much. I think I had 85 pounds in that one. What I should have done is, like I said, gone to a smaller bag and probably put 100 pounds, and then it would have been fully packed. But you live and learn.
Fully packed is like so much nicer. But I mean, it goes back to like even like Basque stones. When you look at the rectangular Basque stones, like those things are made specifically for that athlete, right?
And look at the leverages, like they're pulling up, it's rolling up or kind of like rolling, on it. Like,
right. Yeah, they leverage it up. They leverage it up, and then it's the same exact.
Yeah.
And then it's almost the same exact thing, like you just explained with the sandbag to the shoulder.
Yep. And it's knowing the pace and the rhythm. Like I was so out of breath after missing, but during the actual attempts. Not so much the 441. I wasn't out of breath that much on that one. That one was a really good rep. But obviously, I had the world record attempts in my lap longer. But I am super calm. It's like when you do like hand-to-hand combat or something. You're not trying to like freak out and get your heart rate up. So I'm breathing. I'm patient. I'm applying max force when I can, but it's very controlled in the direction I want it to go. And then after, I'm dead because I've been stabilizing this bag or in those positions so long. But I think a lot of people, they try to use like an aggression on these very technical events, and it's really just metronome, pace, be patient. I'm even Atlas Stone. If you get a nice pace, roll in, hands are at the top, head back, roll in, hands are at the top, head back, and you can repeat that. Cool. There might be someone that one motion is 1 or 2 reps faster than you, but if their cadence on the lap is and then load, well, you're going to beat them once they get tired and they can't one motion. Right. So it's developing a form that's patient and controlled. that really
slow
help.
is smooth, smooth is fast.
Because you'll see one of the best examples of someone kind of getting too overhyped was last year at the Shaw Classic. There was the Women's Open. There was a young athlete, I think she was like 22 and weighed 165 pounds, gets really hyped for this press series. 220-pound log's pretty heavy, like, or 200, something like that. She gets so hyped up, she just throws it up effortlessly, but it's behind her, so it just falls back. And you're like, she wasn't able to like collect herself enough to hit it again and stuff. And you think if with proper like management there, she had enough energy, she probably could have finished the series. But like you have something like that where suddenly you have to try to catch something behind you or like deal with what feels like a catastrophic failure of like just throws you off completely, rather than kind of focusing on that concept of like intentionality will get you a lot farther than just like confidence or just brute forcing it.
And don't take all your stimulants. Don't take all your stimulants for if the first event is overhead press.
That's true.
All
like
jittery. Yeah.
All your warm-ups, both in the contest and training, should be done at the pace you're going to compete or play. And that varies by the contest. So I see people who they like set up their deadlift faster when it's light. Well, if you're in a suit and straps, like, it takes longer to set up. So why not do everything the same pace?
Yeah.
If you're doing your sandbag and you warm up and you one motion them or just like rip them off the floor, but then you're going to do a max sandbag, like that's not the pace you're going to do a max sandbag. So like when I warmed up, I did my 250 bag at the pace that I was going to do my 400 plus, because I know that it doesn't matter how fast I do my 250. It's not going to compare. Same thing with yoke walk. Everybody wants to do speed yoke walks at like 50, 60, 70%. It's like, you're not going to be moving that fast, buddy, at, 800, 900, 1,000 pounds. So do it what's applicable to the contest speed or like the contest form, like axle clean.
Right.
Don't double overhand if you're going to do mixed grip. What's the point? Like, what do you gain from doing, 1/2 plates, 2 plates aside with double overhand if you can't do the actual contest weight?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about training the way you're going to compete. I feel the same way about a lot of things too. Like, why, if I'm going to wear straps on a deadlift, I'm probably going to put my straps on pretty early.
Yep.
I always train stones with tacky, because how often are you going to do a stone without tacky in training? And like, to me, it doesn't teach you proper hand placement to do tackless stones. There's so many examples where I think you're spot on. You're dead on. Like, just train the way you're going to compete.
Yep.
And it's easier too. I mean, that kind of like applies to so much of life in general. Of like, this is slightly off topic, but like I work as a software engineer, and anytime that I'm pushing code up or getting it to be reviewed, I'll make sure to include like my ticket numbers, very detailed description of why I did everything, even if it's a small thing, because it's much easier that way to like do it once it's necessary and everything. Because you have so many people who will kind of like, then once game time happens, you're like, I don't have anything ready. And it's like today, part of why we were late recording, like things turned into an impromptu, like kind of employee review and everything. But the nice thing is, he was like, my director was saying, it's so handy because I note everything I'm doing and have like a clear paper trail of how I got here, that he was like, yours is so easy, we could do it now if we had to and stuff, which turned out to be like a whole partial thing. But you realize this thing of like, it benefits you the most in life to like do everything with intentionality. If you think, you'll see people who they'll be training for a powerlifting meet, and I've seen it happen before because I was on an equipped powerlifting team, where like you have people who train, they'll just drop the bar on deadlifts because they're using bumper plates. You're like, what powerlifting meet is ever going to let you drop that bar? Like, what are you training if you're dropping the bar for half your sets and everything? Yeah. Like, then you have those people who, one of my friends, like, hits 705 in competition and dropped the bar because he was so excited about it. You're like, that doesn't count for anything. Like, it looks cool. We'll get a good video. But it's this idea of like, not everything's for the videos and stuff. Like, it's this idea of the more you do something, the more natural it's going to feel. So if like whatever you're doing, kind of this, like calling back to what Atlas was saying, that like you don't have to necessarily make artificial hard things in your life if you just focus on doing everything you do in life properly. Like those things are naturally going to be something of like, you think even a small thing of like, if someone's not religious, they can just do meditation, but you think meditating daily or like taking time to pray can actually be hard for people, of like taking that time to be alone with your thoughts, very intentional of like, here's what I'm doing. This is a peaceful 5, 10, 15 minutes. Like that's going to be a challenging thing. That seems like a very small thing, but it will overall benefit you. And kind of like taking it all in speed of like, you think knowing your limits and knowing what you can do rather than this kind of quick, like, oh, I'm just doing it to do it. Like if you're warming up for overhead pressing and you're just throwing it up without thinking of any kind of thing, you're like, what movement are you training right there?
Right.
And stuff like, because you'll see people all the time. I'll see them training for comps where like powerlifters are better about it, but sometimes people
why would you
Yeah.
train the bottom half of the push press
Yeah.
when you never miss there? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you do
people
the bottom
will.
half?
Yeah. Because it is that easy thing to just like kind of do these things that like feel good at the time, but it's kind of like, what exactly are you training for? And like, what's the point of it? Because at the end of the day, if you are training for Instagram likes, hopefully Instagram's paying you for that.
Yeah.
Because if you're training for competition, you should be training for that competition.
So there are partial reps that could lead to like a good overhead press. Like maybe you're doing overhead lockouts, jerk supports, pin presses. But these all half reps, like not all partial reps are a road to success in overhead press. Not all roads lead to a good overhead press.
That's true. Because it is like a very technical thing and does take that time.
But I like how you added the prayer thing in there. That's interesting. It kind of goes along with like all the mental health stuff and things like that I think are important for athletes is having certain touch points to like reevaluate like bigger picture. Like I was just at OSG and there were some athletes that really got in their head and like totally catastrophized like everything. But like when you do like prayer or therapy or like have like groups of fellowship and things with people, it's like touch points to make sure you're not like too far off the path of like how do I explain it? It's very easy for us to get obsessed in like the training aspect and not focus on like other areas of our life and like see what other things are potentially being put on the back burner. So like I've been going to therapy like every week for like months now, and it's more of a prophylactic thing, but it's like I can't go to like I couldn't be a complete degenerate in my life and go to therapy and not tell them about that. You know what I mean? So it like prevents you from like doing anything like really stupid when you have like a lot of accountability through those things. And just like you said about like if you don't believe, like you can just meditate. But I think prayer is actually interesting because even if you just talk to yourself, it's probably gonna be beneficial. Like if you did a recap of the day, like before you go to bed, like what did I do good? Okay, we really need to work on this. And you said it out loud. Like those are like affirmations and like stuff like you're gonna like subconsciously be thinking about those more the next day. So I think that's why Andrew Huberman actually talks about prayer and being helpful, which is really funny because people will do all the other things that require money that he tells you to do. Cold plunge, fancy diets, supplements, and they won't just like pray or reflect like every day or a couple times a week. It's literally free. You can do it anywhere.
And it does, like it goes so far of like, for me, I'm not that religious, but I've always liked things of like the serenity prayer, of even just that concept of like, grant me like being able to make peace with things. Because the biggest thing that changed for me is I've always had kind of a weird relationship with sleep for like most of my life. But one of the biggest game changers a therapist helped me with a few years ago is she was like, just talk to yourself about your sleep. If you can't sleep, you can just like, if the helpful thing, she was like, just say like, hey, I might only get 5 hours of sleep tonight, but this bed is warm. It feels comfortable. Like just laying here is relaxing. Like I don't care how much sleep I get, just like, and oddly enough, that helps you get to sleep better than if you're like, oh my gosh, I went to bed at 10 p.m. I have to wake up for a flight at 4 a.m. and you just spend 2 hours staring at your clock. Like that's just going to make you feel terrible. But I think there are like those small things you can do mentally of like, whether or not you believe, of like making peace with the world and centering yourself. No one can go wrong with that. The same thing I've said about years for like people ask me about like sobriety because I don't drink. I'm like, no one I know has ever not benefited from cutting back on drinking and stuff.
Right,
like
right.
you don't have to go full kit and caboodle, because like I don't go to 12-step groups, never did, and everything, because that's just not my deal. But like cutting back, there's no reason. Like there's no downside to meditation or prayer and taking that time to center yourself.
I mean, like abstinence in general is a really good quality to have. I mean, when you learn to abstain from certain things, you get more self-control, and like we talked about, like more enjoyment when you actually like do, like if you drink all the time, it's not very fun, right? And then also just like areas in your brain, like if you don't abstain from things, you're just like desensitizing yourself. And that's a lot of what it is in our society, is like so many overstimulated and over arousing, like there's too much dopamine stuff, and people are just like constantly seeking dopamine. And like we all know that it feels really good to accomplish something that was really challenging because it took a long time to do. You know what I mean? Like it took me over 2 years to come back to strongman. You know, like that's a long time. You know, like how many times I went to bed like, oh, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. So like that hit is like really high. But like if you're constantly seeking these dopamine things that are so easily accessible, like I don't know. I think it's our culture is just so much about, oh, it's okay, just consume. But you have to be like really careful what you're consuming, because that that affects you. And that goes with even all the social media just in the niche of strongman itself. Is there's a lot of negativity in the sport and stuff, and you just can unfollow them and you can block them and remove them. You know, if they're not, most likely they're not actually affecting your life, and they don't actually really know who you are and stuff. And we put too much, and I know I do put too much. Hold it too highly what people think of us, when the only people that matter are like our friends, our family, and like the people that actually train with us. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's shitty people in the world, man. And like, I'm glad that you mentioned that. It always kind of like boggles my mind when I see people posting, stuff or being angry because somebody said something they don't like. And I'm like, you have a block button. Why engage this person? Why go off this whole entire like tirade? Just hit block and save yourself the pain and anguish, because that person doesn't matter anyway.
Right.
Just move on. But yeah, kind of getting back to like the consumption and instant gratification culture we live in, there is so much more actual like meaningful gratification to abstinence, like you said, whatever it is. Vices are terribly controlling things, and if you can get yourself to a place where you don't have those vices, where you do abstain from those things that give you those big dopamine hits, man, life gets so much better. And when you get an opportunity to have something similar that gives you the same feeling, it's so much more meaningful and healthier in your life, man. I mean, huge. I mean, that's such a big topic that needs to be talked about more, in my opinion.
Because like less is more of like, I've been getting a lot into like minimalist channels and stuff. And there is this idea of like, because we are in a society where everything's out there all the time. Like I have friends who some friends who would compete almost every month because that feeling of competing is amazing. But guess what? Like
that was a coping mechanism for me for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've talked about before, like I'm technically diagnosed bipolar and stuff. And like manic type behavior is what contest is. You're in a manic, highly aroused, highly stimulated flow state behavior. And so like what I did was I just competed more often so I could use that or channel that or get that, because that's a high. But then that's really not ever really coping with being actually content. So like this past year I haven't competed, and it was like really difficult because that was a lot of my identity as an athlete, was like, expressing that. And then unfortunately, a lot of people don't like some of those traits of someone who has that, like OCD. Yeah, it's awesome when it's working for you, but when it's working against you, no one likes that. Being obsessive about anything, it can affect sleep, irritability, things like that. So I just lost my train of thought slightly. Shoot. Where was I going with that? Oh my gosh. Oh, but just how often you compete and those things that you put in to try to like stay high, so to speak. But like one of the Bible verses I like is actually Philippians 4:11 and 12. So everybody knows Philippians 4:13, but like the ones that come before it set the context, and it's about being content in anything. And I think a lot of us aren't very content in like basic stuff. Like I can't tell you how much enjoyment I get out of having like a really basic life. Like I don't go out to eat a lot. I wear like minimal clothing. I own my car, but like Instagram and society keeps pushing. You got to do all these like really crazy things, but you look at the people that are most happy and they have simple lives, like simple lives. And you see that a lot in people of faith because they live a simple life that's geared around helping people, and, you go to church and stuff, and maybe they're not making the most money, but they're having a great impact on society. And then we all know someone that makes tons of money and they waste it at clubs and, cars and just bad behavior, and they don't really positively impact anyone. And that's just like a really poor way to live. So I think that was a big mental health thing, was like learning that the idea of content versus like feeling good. And then also, especially as men, because our society and everything, men are like meant to like suffer. Like they're like we're meant, like there's a reason that we have aggression and stuff. So we're meant to like protect and suffer and like, be capable of those things. So it was also frustrating, not competing, because that was like my aggressive side and being able to like use that. But now since I've kind of like figured things out, I've been able to be like super aggressive and like on top of training, because I've been able to channel that so much in the training and see that that's a positive thing. And people that don't like that crazy or like aggressive thing are probably not people we want to be around, because it's that controlled aggression that like is a good masculine trait. And it's all about the self-control aspect. So it'd be one thing if I was just like fighting people in public all the time. That'd be a terrible, like I'd be a complete asshole, but it's in the gym. So yeah, I'm slamming the bar and I'm, hitting myself in the head, but like I walk out of the gym and I've probably been the most patient person I've ever been. So that's a really big thing is, the absence. We talked about having self-control and definitely being content with like really basic things. And that's really hard in our world of strongman. It's always more. It's, this alpha male mentality, which the most alpha people are like the most meek people, they're calm, quiet, patient. But when it comes time to not be there, they're definitely able to flip that switch. So
yeah, that whole idea of like alpha, I think is like, actually, I think that's pretty toxic, right? Kind of getting back to
kind of cringeworthy, but that's, people think if you're strong, you're alpha, but there's tons of shitty strongmen that have terrible morals, terrible ethics, don't take care of their family.
Really, but it kind of gets back to like the struggle, right? I mean, men, I just want to kind of expand on like my thought process on that. Like men need to experience like power struggle, right? Because that's what, when we have autonomy to seek out our own goals and struggle and achieve them, right, it makes us feel powerful, for a lack of better words. And powerful doesn't mean that we're like toxic or, want to control other people. It just makes us feel like autonomously powerful, like we've achieved something. And men need that feeling and of that process of struggling to achieve something greater, right? In our society nowadays makes that very, very difficult, because again, everything is so easily accessible. Our basic necessities are easy to achieve, right? We go to work a stupid job and have a house. I mean, in this country, you could be super poor and all of your basic needs are still like met, right? And so it is hard being, I'm not saying it's not hard for women or anybody else. It's very hard for everybody, I think, in today's modern age, because so many natural dynamics that we evolved to face have changed dramatically in a very short period of time in evolution, right? Or in time, whatever. And they continue to evolve very quickly. So yeah, man, I think you're right, kind of dead on that men do need to struggle, but that struggle is that power struggle, right? To achieve something, to feel, I say powerful but it's accomplished, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not alpha per se, right? Maybe it is, but that high idea that's in the mainstream of alpha is really fucking stupid and toxic, right?
It is. Like, you have so many people, at least in that sphere, who use it in a predatory way, because I'd say our society these days is very atomized. It's very isolated. So you have people like Andrew Tate, generally just kind of like a shitty person, but he charges young, vulnerable men $500 a month for his Hustle University and stuff. Like, that's, in my mind, that's reprehensible. Like, taking advantage of vulnerable people. And these people will do it because they're... Kind of
what strongman is.
It's true. It's true.
We're a lot of vulnerable people. There are no unbroken world champions. That's just, that's the nature of it. And so I recognize that.
And I think channeling it is good.
In channeling, and we can always speak on men, but yeah, I think from a male point of view, because we're mistaking equality as like equal responsibility, or I'm sorry, we're mistaking equality of how people should be treated by the fact that people are the same, that genders are the same, the roles are the same, things like that. And that's really affecting men because, as we were talking about, we need purpose and something to protect. Like, it needs to be like a greater thing. So, I mean, look at people that, like, my brother just had a kid, and that like flips a switch. Like, once you have a kid, it's like, oh my gosh, like this is what everything's about, right? And I've seen that numerous times with men. And that's like a really important thing. But now we live in a culture where like they're like, oh, don't worry about having kids, or like, and that's fine, that's your personal thing, whatever. But I'm saying that's like something that evolutionary, that was like the whole point, right? Like, you're trying to find a mate, to have a kid, and be able to have a bigger pack to be able to get more food and survive and all this kind of stuff. And now we don't even have that. And like, God forbid that you show any amount of aggression as a male. So it's trying to bring people to have the same thing when men have unique skill sets that possibly women don't have. And we need to learn to like better intermingle those together and work together. And it's not a power trip for a man to like provide protection or have purpose. It's actually quite the opposite. Like, what do men protect usually? Women, children, and society as a whole. So if you cut that off of them, like, you're just literally negatively affecting your life. Like, whether you're a woman or a man, if you just, I mean, we need law enforcement, we need armies, we need defense, and most of them are men. And you're saying, I don't want that. That's too toxic. Well, go live somewhere where you can protect yourself then, because that's what we have here. Oh.
That's true. Because in the end, I mean, they've even done studies of like Sweden and Switzerland where there is like very much a push for gender equality. There are still just natural ways that things will filter out, because at the end of the day, even if you didn't think about gender, you're like, we're just going to have sports, we're just going to do DEXA scans, and we're just going to group people by muscle mass and bone density. You'd actually have basically the same thing we have now and stuff. Like, there are these like fundamental things. And I think the interesting thing is trying to talk about like the things we all need, because part of it is like, as men, but also as humans in general, like being dedicated is super important, being able to be committed and stuff. And it's interesting because so many of these people you'll see of like Dan Bilzerian and these figures who will have like big beards, like strong and everything, but just kind of flex, but have nothing of substance. Whereas in reality, like, there is this thing of like, if you're not offering anything positive, like, it's one of those things of not where we're more religious in this episode than usual. But one of my favorite verses is always the 1 Corinthians 13 of like, all these, you can do anything in the world you want, but if you don't love people, that doesn't mean anything. You could literally speak in the tongues of angels. You can do all these things, move mountains, but if you don't have love, that doesn't mean anything. And it's interesting because you have so many people that in a culture that's purely materialistic now, that's all it is the material accomplishments. We've gotten to the point as a society where now gender is just how you consume clothes and how you consume media. Like, it's nothing, like, everything's a consumer pattern of how you consume sex, how you do this. Whereas like in reality, people have so much more depth to them, but we kind of do this like thing where we just have like caricatures of stuff, because people will be like, oh, like this person's so alpha and masculine. And how many of these guys, when you find out, you're like, oh, Dan Bilzerian, self-made millionaire. Yes, most people would be self-made millionaires if their dads left them $35 million. Like, most of us would be self-made, like most. And that's interesting.
That's I actually put that as something on my notes here. Some people say they're self-made, but a lot of credit goes to if you believe in a higher power, and then also all the people that support you, and the people that support you through the whole thing. Everybody can be around when you're on the podium, right? Everybody can be around and get the job. It's when life gets really sucky and you go through really bad things and you see who sticks around. Those are the people that really count, and then, like I said, it all goes to some type of higher power. So I would say God, whatever you believe in, but you really think there's 8 billion people on this planet, which is just a tiny speck in the universe, just by like, and it's all because you made it happen? Like, no, there are powers or things happening that are so far beyond your control. But I'll segue us into something that's really good about that is, or it kind of hinted out, is so I've won like multiple pro cards and multiple world championships. So like that gives me like, or it doesn't give me, but it like, make people think like I'm good at strongman, and that gives you the halo effect of like you being like a strong person or like a good character. And I'm not saying I am, but what's interesting is some of my clients who are not the strongest are some of the most quality individuals that could possibly be, right? They prioritize their family and community and their jobs, and they don't get easily angered and things like that. And I think one thing that we need to remember is rewarding those people more. We reward a lot of people that end up on the podium, and those people could be really poor examples of anything outside of lifting weights. But yeah, I think that's what I've learned most from, being able to coach is I'm just like, wow, like that was the right priority. Like I had someone leave my roster who had a good chance of podium at OSG because he didn't want to affect his health because he has kids. He's like, that's way more important than any trophy. I'm like, bet. I agree.
Yeah.
So it's hopefully if you're watching this, you're probably a fan of strongman and you're a fan of professional strongman. But remember, they are kind of characters on the internet. They're good at strongman, and maybe they're good at making dumb Instagram videos and all these parodies and stuff or whatever. But unless they're a quality human being that like has a greater purpose, is like helping the community, which there are definitely some that do. I wouldn't necessarily put them on a pedestal as who I want to be, and that includes me too. Like I don't like when people are like, "Oh, I want to be like you." I'm like, "No, be better than me,"
right?
Because I'm not that great. So, yeah.
I like that, man. I'm a big fan of that because I agree. Just because you're a great athlete doesn't make you a great person. Just because you drive, like you said, a really expensive vehicle and $500 million doesn't make you a successful person either, right? But what really truly matters in the end is our actions and behavior towards others, how we speak about other people in their absence. Like I'm a huge thing about that. Like, and I'm not religious at all either, but I grew up Christian in a Christian home, and I value a lot of the teachings of the Bible. One thing that I always come back to is like, let he who without sin cast the first stone, right? And far too often in our community, people who are guilty of bad, like we're all guilty of bad behavior, right? We're all guilty of sin, and however you want to define sin is bad behavior, right? People are talking, casting stones constantly behind the scenes, and it's like that like all you're doing, in my opinion, is telling me that you are not a good character, that you're speaking poorly of me, probably behind my back. And so kind of my point is, it's like, your character and your behavior and your actions speak so much more loudly, right, than words. But
it's that word awareness. It's that word awareness. People like draw attention or like awareness to things. And I think we probably talked about it at some point, but like, what actions are you doing to actually make that change? Like we're all aware there's breast cancer, right?
Yeah.
There's probably not a person alive that doesn't know what breast cancer is, at least in America. But like, have you donated to the breast cancer charities? Have you volunteered at a breast cancer charity? Like, have you helped someone? Have you been there to mentor someone? Whatever. Like, did you stick around when your spouse that had breast cancer, went through it, or did you leave? Like all these types of things. But people will post awareness or try to point out things, but they're not doing anything action-wise. And those action things can be done behind the scenes that nobody knows about.
Yeah, you don't need to brag about it.
Because they don't want the reward in public. They want it, later on. And so it's funny, the people that post the most about awareness are probably the ones that are doing the least amount of action.
Agreed.
Because it's easy. And it is like, we've talked about the quick highs of like, nothing is a quicker high than like just posting about something. The same as like, you'll have people who just announce goals all the time, because actually they said one of the reasons sometimes it's best actually not to announce your goals.
You get the dopamine hit from announcing.
Because you have all these people who like every time will post this like big grandiose thing and stuff, and you're like,
awesome, man, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, like because so many people, they're like, oh, I'm definitely gonna hit the 800-pound deadlift at OSG. I'm definitely gonna do this, and it's like, well, we gotta see you. We gotta see you lift weights and everything. But I think it's the culture of immediate satisfaction. It's very much this idea of like immediate results, and I think a part of it also the dopamine hits social media is purely designed for that. Neither Darren or I are on Facebook, and all the time we'll miss out on things or miss out. But like,
we don't miss out on anything because we don't even know that it happens, which is the greatest part of it.
Yeah, because sometimes people have told us with certain episodes or certain things, they're like, talk about this thing. And I'm like, I guarantee you, if it's still that big of a deal in a week, maybe we can talk about it. But it's crazy how many things they're like, you definitely should strike while the iron's hot. And I'm like, what iron? Like, that's not like, it's this very like small, like easy thing, but it's hard as a society to think about like the long-term point of all these things, because it's very easy to like,
if you ask me like, what are you doing in the gym, or like, what are you training for, I usually don't give a response, because if I gave you a response, they're going to be like, oh, that's great. You know?
Yeah.
So like, I'm training for things. I have my own goals, but like, I'm not going to go put them out and tell everybody exactly what I'm going to do. You know, I'm going to continue competing, and I'm going to continue doing strongman. But like, if I put a goal on it, or try to set something up, like I technically tried to set up to break the block record at 105, but it's just not worth to cut to it. It's just too much work. Honestly, it's too much work and too little money. And, you know, money would have to be guaranteed, and that's still far off from ever happening.
Right.
But, you know I can do it. I already did it. I'm already confident in my ability. So I'm kind of moving on. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. Like, when people ask you like, oh, what are you doing next? Like, I'm just like, just training.
Just training.
So
what was it? I like, he's blown up hugely in the past few years, but Kyriakos Grizzly, the large guy from Greece who does the Zercher shrugs and stuff. It's funny because his most iconic thing was his, like, people asked, they were like, what do you train for? And his answer is just for the difficult. Like, it's interesting. There's this like very simple concept of like, and it's funny because now he's like on shirts and everything, and just like,
he's going to the Arnold too. Like, they got him.
He is going to the Arnold,
which is crazy because it's like, it's funny because
I hope the only thing he says all weekend is
I very rarely, I think the most English I usually hear him say is respect, my brother. That's all. He's all the time. He'll be like, respect. And it's interesting to like see this, like, it's an ambiguous concept of like the difficult, but it's interesting to like watch. He's the perfect example of someone who like, who knows what he's been training for, but he's somehow just made it because he just does this stuff consistently of like, it's crazy watching his old clips because he was an accomplished weightlifter and just had a series of catastrophic.
He enjoys what he's doing. Like, he obviously goes to the gym, he's hungry, and he's hitting whatever PRs he calls PRs, and he's doing weird lifts. So what? Now, if he was claiming to be the world's strongest man, then obviously we'd have a problem because then he would have to compete in that contest. It's the same thing with Sam Asolik, right? Like, he's been huge, and people criticize him for not competing, but I don't think in the small amount of content his I've consumed that he's ever said he was the best bodybuilder or wanted to compete in bodybuilding. So that's why he has such great following. It's so organic and natural, and it's just a dude wanting to get freaking jacked. And like, we all relate to that. It's not a dude saying, yeah, I'm gonna be the best bodybuilder, I'm gonna beat Ronnie Coleman, all the better back. No, he's literally just like, oh yeah, look at those fucking delts, man, that's sick. Like, and we all relate to that, you know?
Yeah,
he's a normal dude.
Millions of views. Because that's the interesting thing is his comments. Like, it's funny in an age of, like, Darren and I were talking recently of like, there are these hopeful signs appearing now of like TikTok's talking about trying to get long form content up to 30 minutes. And it's funny of like, Sam Sulik's one of the most viral people out there. And half his videos are just like him on his 10-minute drive to the gym, just talking to the camera. No edits, no nothing. Just like him just going to get chocolate milk and just him posing. He never cuts anything, never edits it, and it feels so real and authentic because a part of it is in a culture that is just vacuous and materialistic. Authenticity shines through of very much this concept of like,
he doesn't wear nice clothes and Jordans. He's not in the best lighting. He doesn't have the best like production quality. He's not even at the best gym. He's just he's you or I throwing on some sweats and going to the gym and trying to get jacked. And that's how we got into it.
That's the raw thing of it. Because I also think there's this like, sometimes there can be gatekeeping and like strongman and stuff, but so many people make a big deal of like, sometimes, let's say sometimes, like, but it's this funny thing of like, people constantly like make fun of certain gyms or certain things of they'll be like, oh, I trained at a hardcore gym. I trained at a strongman gym. And I'm like, what matters is just what you're putting up. There's what I think his name's the Angry Hippo or something on Instagram. He just trains out of Planet Fitness. He's a strongman who just like does these things. If he'll deadlift there, he benches on the Smith machine like 365 for something, like all these little things. And at the end of the day, getting in there and doing it is better than just being a passive, like this idea. Because so many people love that concept of like, I'm at a hardcore training facility, I'm at a serious gym. And I'm like, how much time are you spending on your phone at that serious gym? Like, how much is like, how much are you actually doing? Because at the end of the day, Mark, Deadliest Lift, one of his best comments, he was like, experience and fitness is measured by pounds lifted. People got mad about it and everything, but he was like, you have to do it to like show something and everything. Sure. And I think there's this like idea randomly, kind of like we touched on with masculinity, of this like sometimes there can be this false materially projected version of it, when in fact there's this whole well-rounded holistic thing of it's better to be actually strong and actually training yourself into Planet Fitness than to be screwing around at a serious gym or whatever. Just, but it's hard because people don't
one of the
like
things
that.
Like I've said recently too is like it's training methodology, same thing, right? Everybody's arguing over whose methodology is the best, and I'm like, but that's secondary to you just showing up. Like for your athletes just showing up, like methodology is just one path to a means to an end, right? And you could take numerous paths to get to the same goal, right? Methodology is very secondary just to showing up and doing the fucking work, putting in the reps in, right?
It's not fun though.
We're boring Andrew.
No,
I don't.
Andrew doesn't sleep very much, and
I do. I was on here the other day, I think with Nick, and like I got to a point where like I just started yawning, and I'm not bored. I'm just so like I just like got tired for about like 2 or 3 minutes and yawned.
I'm looking forward to getting back into a normal routine. I've been all over the place: meals, sleep, work, travel. Yeah, just trying to get back into like pseudo pro strongman types. I'm probably only like 50 or 60%. What's the word? Whatever. I'm only putting that much effort in. I can't think of the word, but so yeah. So I'm trying to get that 80 plus. You know, all the meals hit. 8 hours of sleep. So I finally reordered my Whoop after I broke it from travel. I dropped the bar on it from push press. I was so mad about that.
Ooh.
Yeah, but I mean, at least I hit a PR the next week, so it was like,
Oh yeah. Dude, the 405 by 6 was ridiculous.
405?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the PR you were talking about, but
a
lot of people have been like started sending me that video. I'm like, I've already saw it, but like, holy shit! Like, people.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put out that I do want to hit. So my general plan is to hit. I think my best ever push press was in prep for. I went to this really crappy show in Georgia to try to break the American record. I weighed like only 290 or 295. I just barely missed 462. I was like off center on the bar. I had to take the bar. The promoter didn't bring the right plates. It was not, strong man. But I hit like either 435 or 440 for a double. So I want to hit 205 kilos, which is 451.9 or something. And then I'm going to go back down and try to work my split jerk back up. But just trying to stay healthy. I mean, I get strong so quick on those movements that I've done a lot. And my body weight's been climbing up like crazy. So I'm just getting even stronger. So that's my plan is hopefully next week go for a single. If I hit the 451, then I'll probably go back down to like mid to high threes and start split jerk and kind of periodize that up. And then probably doing like an alternating structure going back and forth. I really think push press drives everything so well. I've liked the thrusters. I think there's some benefit to that. I've liked the rebound presses. I love pause reps. If you're good at pausing push press, you're going to be explosive in every event, because if you dip with the circus dumbbell and it starts to move on you and you have to pause at the bottom, you can regroup. And the world record is done still by Kielkowski, I think, and he basically pauses at the bottom. And then he just freaking jumps through the freaking dumbbell. Right. But yeah, I mean, really basic stuff, but I want to hit 451 and I'll weigh under 300. So that's cool. I still have that goal of, I got to feel 500 overhead. I got to feel 500 overhead. I'm not going to feel 6, so I got to feel 5.
That's just so incredible. I'm like,
That is incredible.
I'm gonna do it in my garage with my Ring cameras. So I have the 2 Ring cameras now.
There you go.
I only had the one when you were here, and it kind of cropped some of it because I had it too high behind the foam panel. But now I got them like perfect. So nice. I got my phone. I got 2 Ring cameras. I might even put a 3rd in there. So there's no chance of me missing any PRs or any reactions or anything. So
hell yeah, man.
It's true. Now you got to start streaming on like Twitch or something like that.
Yes.
The multicam, get people pay subscriptions.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be kind of cool to do a YouTube channel and stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like I post enough about somebody made a thing like you post too much of your personal life, but that's kind of what, or like just of your life in general. But like that's because I have to humanize who I am as a coach too, you know, so people want to see the whole thing.
Right.
But yeah, hopefully in a week, I don't know when this drops, but hopefully I'll hit, 451. My best right now in recent training was 435. So it's only a 16-pound jump, and I've gone up like 30 or 40 pounds like my 3 to 5 reps. So
we forgot to run a poll yesterday about you getting the sandbag too, I think, didn't we?
We did. We forgot to run a poll.
I will do. I'll reattempt the sandbag if somebody can send me a 160 kilo bag and enough cash to put the sand in it. Because
there you go.
It's basically like paying what the bags are like 140, I think, and then the sand would be like 8 bags of sand. So yeah, it's pretty much like a $200. Yeah, it's $200 to make a sandbag, and I got to do it. So it's labor.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to do it one time, and then it's going to go in the freaking corner of my garage. I'm not going to touch it. So like, if somebody wants to sponsor it, I'll put their company in the bottom corner the whole time.
There you go. There you go.
I got 600 shares. So the way I see it is, you send me $500. You're basically getting it's only $1 a share. You only need like what? 10 people to click on your $50 product and you paid for it. So
hell yeah.
If anyone's watching this episode and they want to be on my thing, as long as it's ethical, I'm not going to advertise any OnlyFans or any BS like
that. Oh man, we were talking about that recently.
Nothing like having equality, like having people have OnlyFans but still keep sponsorships. I really don't think sponsors should keep athletes that have OnlyFans accounts. That's just not. It's not a good look. I actually need to update my terms of service, but I'm not going to allow that. Like once I find out an athlete has that, they're automatically dropped. Like you just can't have anything tied to that. And I just find it interesting. People have in their bio, sponsor OnlyFans.
Right.
If I ran this company, I do not want OnlyFans 3 tabs lower than mine. I don't want a screenshot that would have my company with an OnlyFans link. That is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's become such an ingrained part of the culture because it is just like they have.
I mean, it's male driven. It's males that are buying it, so we can
and that's
blame
the
men, obviously. So that's why we need people to like not, that's why we need people to have some self control. Like, cool, they're hot chicks that that lift, and that's your type, but like you don't need to give them $10 and it's ridiculous. Like, what are you gaining? Yeah, what are you gaining from it? You're just losing your soul, and you're supporting that behavior. It's terrible.
We could go down a rabbit hole on that.
Yeah, and we've already had a long enough episode.
And probably get canceled for like I kind of agree though. It's so anti. I feel like it's so anti like feminist too. Like because like you said, it's male driven. It's like why are you feeding the patriarchy exactly what they want while saying like while trying to fight for like equality and independency. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but
it hurts mental health. Like I can't imagine, like even as an athlete, like I sometimes feel like a pawn, right? In these bigger federations where you get hurt, no one cares about you, no one pays you, no one checks in, 3 months later after you've had surgery, you're a pawn. Now you're literally selling your body on the internet. Like you are a pawn. And so I don't know how that wouldn't affect me mentally to think these people only care to message me because they can see me naked or like get what they want. And it's not like they're supporting you or protecting you like a normal male would if you were in a relationship. Like they're literally giving you $10 to $20.
Yeah. Consumer and instant gratification society, man. That's where we're at.
It's bad.
Unfortunately. But hey, let's wrap it up, man. Any final words, Clay? I mean, great having you on for the 4th time.
Yeah.
I have no doubt we're going to have you on again. Let's have it.
Yeah, so I am looking for sponsorship still for my show. It's April 27th in Jacksonville, Florida. It is USS. I'm also looking for if anybody wants to do a impressive. No. Oh, I was going to cut out. No, stop. Are you guys there?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
here. You're
think
cutting
you're
out a little
frozen.
bit right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
I think you're good.
Anyways, I'm also looking for people. I'm looking for sponsors. If any pro strongmen have like an impressive record or lift, I'm trying to look for someone to do something that at my show. I have one person kind of in the pipeline. I probably need volunteers. So that'd be awesome. April 27th in Jacksonville, Florida. If you guys are looking for coaching or have any questions about coaching, feel free to send me a message on Instagram. I try to answer all messages. That's Running Strongman or First Call Strength is my business account. I really appreciate you guys having me on here for the 4th time, even though I don't really compete anymore. So I probably pissed some people off. So make sure you get the guys on here that that actually compete and stuff. I'm just I don't even know what I am now. Just internet personality or something, or
You're still a 2-time world champion, or how many times? No, 3 times. 3-time world champion.
Two.
Is it 2? Okay.
Well, if you count the trademark show that you're not allowed to mention on the air, that was called a world championship. But
yeah,
I don't know how well it was.
I count it.
All right, then it's 2.5.
2.5.
It's I think it's 2.5 because it's based on like how much they give you after the show, and so like it's only 2.5.
Okay. Fair. All right, man. Thanks for coming on, dude. I'm sure we'll be talking soon. I know I'll see you this summer. So.
Yes, sir. All right, guys.
All right, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and follow us on Instagram for updates. We'll catch you next time on World's Strongest Opinions.